The Terminator made $78 million in 1984, so obviously everyone started making their own killer robot movies. Most of them were, of course, garbage, but if you make it to the end, I bet you'll find at least one movie you actually want to watch. Director Brian Hannett had this idea for a thoughtful time travel romance with some satirical edge. He'd co-written Mad Max 2, so he knew how to tell a story. They even got Carrie Fisher to sign on. Then the producers looked at how much money the Terminator was making and decided to trash the whole thing. The original concept was interesting. The year 4039, humanity's last time-traveling cities getting chased through time by cyborg invaders. The city gets sent back to 1988 and two soldiers go ahead to prepare the landing site. One's a guy named Ballard, played by Tom Burlinson, and the other's this historian warrior named Petra, played by Carrie Fisher. Petra gets injured and they have to fight off the cyborgs that followed them back. But the producers kept rewriting it. The budget hit $8 million with backing from Roger Corman's studio, and if you know anything about Corman, you know where this is going. They demanded more action, more explosions, more Terminator-style shootouts. 8 weeks before shooting, they brought in an American writer to do rewrites. Hannett's co-writer quit in protest. Hannett tried to make it work, but eventually walked away during post-production. He later said he left one step ahead of being fired. The movie flopped and basically ended Tom Burlinson's leading man career. This one's also called the Retaliator, depending on where you found it. And it might be the most cynical Terminator ripoff of the decade because it wasn't even originally supposed to be a Terminator ripoff. There were 2 unfinished movies starring this actress Sandahl Bergman, both abandoned, both unusable on their own. Someone decided to Frankenstein them together into one movie and sell it as a female Terminator knockoff. The story they cobbled together is about a Middle Eastern terrorist named Samira who gets captured by the CIA. They turn her into a cyborg assassin with implants and built-in weapons. She's supposed to infiltrate and destroy her old terror cell, but instead she breaks free and starts hunting down everyone who programmed her. There's a mercenary trying to stop her while protecting his kid, played by a 13-year-old Paul Walker in one of his first roles. The movie has car chases, shootouts, a marketplace massacre, some gruesome surgery scenes, all the B-movie staples. They'd even planned all these cool robotic facial appliances to make Bergman actually look like a cyborg. Hired this effects guy, Robert Short, to create them. He'd later win an Oscar for Beetlejuice. But partway through production, Short got fired. When he left, he took all the prosthetics with him. So we end up with a movie about a female Terminator, and she barely looks like a cyborg. This one was a TV movie, NBC pilot that was supposed to launch a series. The pitch was basically the Terminator meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets The Fugitive, which honestly isn't a bad concept. You've got this newspaper reporter whose girlfriend comes back from a flight acting strange. Then she tries to murder him, revealing she's a cyborg that's nearly impossible to kill. He manages to destroy her, but now he's wanted for murder. The second half turns into him on the run from the FBI while being hunted by more of these human-impersonating androids that have infiltrated society. The idea is actually pretty good. Body-snatching cyborgs secretly replacing people could have been a great series. But this was network TV in 1986, so everything's watered down. The budget's tiny, the robot effects look cheap, and the lead actor is way too stiff for an action hero. Earl Bowen shows up in this, the guy who played the psychologist in the actual Terminator movies, which is kind of funny. And the director was Michael Chapman, who'd been cinematographer on Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, but had never really directed TV before. NBC watched the pilot and passed on making it a series. It aired once in 1986 and then disappeared. It's kind of an interesting failure. Good concept, bad execution, worth watching if you're into cheesy 80s sci-fi and nothing else. Lady Terminator is the most batshit insane movie on this list. It opens with this South Sea queen from local folklore. She's a sorceress who castrates men during sex using a supernatural eel that lives inside her. A man defeats her by stealing her magic talisman, and before she disappears, she swears she'll return in 100 years to kill his descendant. Cut to the 1980s. American anthropology student dives to the Queen's underwater lair, gets possessed, and emerges as an indestructible killer. She gets herself some leather and starts hunting down a pop singer who's the great-granddaughter of the guy who defeated the Queen. From there, it becomes a shot-for-shot Terminator remake set in Jakarta. She gets guns, storms through nightclubs, and massacres an entire police station with an Uzi. That scene copies the police station sequence from Terminator almost entirely. It's not a good movie by any normal measure, but it's so committed to being completely insane that it becomes genuinely entertaining. The most shameless rip-off you'll ever see that's also somehow unique because they grafted it onto this folklore about a castrating sea witch. Italy in the 80s was ripping off every Hollywood blockbuster that made money. I've talked about Italian alien rip-offs before, and of course they did the same thing with Terminator. One of those attempts involved arm wrestling. Sergio Martino made a bunch of exploitation films and saw an opportunity after Terminator blew up in the States. The movie follows this cyborg assassin who's supposed to kill an environmental activist, but his remaining human side kicks in and he refuses. So now he's on the run from the people who created him. He ends up hiding at a roadside diner in the Arizona desert. And this is where it gets really stupid. The diner caters to arm wrestling truckers. So you've got this fugitive cyborg trying to lay low by competing in arm wrestling matches. At one point, he nearly tears a guy's arm completely off during a contest. Meanwhile, the bad guys are sending mercenaries and other cyborgs after him. There are shootouts and explosions, and somehow there's always time for another arm wrestling scene. It's completely ridiculous. But that's also why it works as entertainment. It commits so hard to this absurd premise that you kind of have to respect it. CBS made a TV movie the same year where Robert Conrad hunts a rogue government cyborg. That's basically the pitch. Retired agent gets called back because the government's killer android project went bad, and now this human-looking android's murdering people on its own. Conrad's character has to track it down before it completes its kill list. The scientist who helped build the thing teams up with him to try and stop it. Problem is, it's a TV movie from 1986. So there's no budget for effects, no cool robot shots, just a lot of scenes where people stand around talking about the killer cyborg instead of showing you anything. For a movie about a lethal android, there's way too much dialogue and not enough actual threat. It's generally considered a weak Terminator knockoff that strips out everything that made Cameron's film work. But Robert Conrad was famous from the Wild Wild West back in the 60s, and seeing him play an action hero again has some nostalgic appeal if you're into it. One-time watch at best, and only if you're really into cheap 80s sci-fi. But don't expect anything close to what Cameron did. Tim Kincaid had been directing adult films before he pivoted to sci-fi schlock for producer Charles Band. His first attempt at legitimate cinema was Robot Holocaust. The year is 2033. Robots have rebelled and taken over Earth. New York City is now called New Terra, and it's a wasteland ruled by something called the Dark One. It's basically an evil computer that nobody ever sees. Humanity's enslaved, working in factories or scavenging in ruins. Our hero is this nomadic warrior named Neo who wanders in from the wastelands with his comic relief robot sidekick. He meets a woman whose scientist father got captured by the Dark One, and they assemble this ragtag team to go rescue him. The whole thing plays out like someone tried to make Conan meet Star Wars with about $40. They're fighting rubber-suited mutants in what's clearly just an abandoned factory in New York. The hand-to-hand combat looks like nobody involved had ever been in a fight before. The special effects are laughable. Even by 80s B-movie standards, Robot Holocaust is notorious for being terrible, which is exactly why it became a cult favorite. Back in 1989, Mystery Science Theater did an episode riffing on it during their first season, and that episode became one of their most popular. This one is a shameless ripoff of both Terminator and RoboCop, made in Dallas on what looks like a budget of about $12. The story follows Dr. Barrett, a scientist cop who's developing an experimental robotic police unit for the Dallas Police Department. The robot is supposed to be an autonomous peace officer that responds to violent crimes instantly. Problem is, it's nowhere near ready. It's unstable and prone to killing people. But Barrett's bosses are impatient because they need results for some politician's re-election campaign. An incompetent technician accidentally activates the robot prematurely, and it immediately goes on a rampage. It's programmed with a literal interpretation of law enforcement, so it starts executing people for minor infractions. It pulls over a woman named Sonia for speeding, kills her fiancé during the traffic stop, and then chases her across the countryside to eliminate this lawbreaker. The production values here are abysmal. For half the runtime, nothing happens, just characters sitting in rooms delivering absurd dialogue. The robot doesn't even show up until 36 minutes in, and when he does, he mostly just stands around or rides his motorcycle. It's actually incredible how bad it is. The screenwriter Bud Lewis later disowned the movie completely. He said it was supposed to be a parody, but apparently the director and producers didn't get the memo and filmed it as a straight-action movie. This Italian exploitation film by Bruno Mattei takes the cake for pure audacity. In some countries, it marketed itself as Terminator 2, despite the fact that it has more in common with aliens than anything else. The film is set in the year 2000 in a post-apocalyptic Venice. Pollution has turned Venice into a toxic dead city of empty canals and abandoned facilities. When people start disappearing in underground research tunnels, a special forces team gets sent in to investigate. The team is a complete ripoff of the colonial Marines from Aliens. Macho soldiers with guns, plus a female civilian advisor named Dr. Sarah who's basically Ellen Ripley. There's even a little girl survivor who bonds with Sarah, just like Newt. And there's a corporate guy named Samuel Fuller who's suspiciously calm and secretive. They venture into the submerged catacombs and get attacked by mutant creatures. The squad gets picked off one by one in gory ways. But then comes the twist. Late in the film, Fuller reveals he's actually an android assassin sent by the corporation. He suddenly starts terminating the remaining humans, targeting Sarah and the little girl because they've learned too much. That's where the Terminator part comes in. The film is obviously a mess. The acting is dubbed in terrible English, the monsters are cheap rubber suits, and there's zero internal logic to anything. But fans of Italian exploitation defend Bruno Mattei's ripoffs as being so sincere they're endearing, and Shocking Dark is the perfect example.